So let me just say before we start, I mean, for people who might be tuning in, that we are now so very privileged to be able to have this conversation with Khadar Ahmed. If I say it wrong, let me know. And regarding his film, the wonderful film, The Gravedigger's Wife, which was released in 2021. And it premiered at the International Critics Week at the 2021 Cannes Festival. And it was also the Somali entry for the Best International Feature at the 94th Academy Awards. Bravo, yes.
Hey, thank you, thank you, thank you.
So I love this film. I love this film. And it was just such a privilege, you know, to be asked to do the moderation, but that's not the point of this conversation. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I have so many things that, you know, that I think about when I'm watching it. I watched it a few times. And, but let me start with some of the things that I have seen, you know, like on interviews and stuff that you've talked about in terms of what you thought of as your, you know, how you were thinking of it in terms of your responsibility to Somali community and to the world as a filmmaker in writing and, you know, and bringing this feature to us.
Yeah. So this is a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear what you were thinking, and, you know, just I've heard it. I've heard you say little things, but I just want to hear it again.
Yeah. No, it for me it wasn't really it wasn't about you know, trying to prove the world, you know, that, you know, of what, you know, what Somali community is. But for me, it was about sharing, you know, the story of this small Somali family, you know, and then just, you know, be true to everything that I have seen in my life, you know, tell a story about those people that I have grown up with, you know, those people that I have, you know, known for my entire life, that I never get to see their stories, you know, shared on the big screen with the world. So it wasn't, you know, trying to prove the world that we are, you know, this type of, you know, nation, but it was just more about, you know, giving a voice to one particular family in the Somali society. Yeah.
And one of the things, I mean, I think the reason I ask it that way, though, Khadar, is because I don't know, as a writer, I don't know how you were approaching it, and you'll tell us. But I was thinking of it in the light of like other traditions, like in the light of neo-realist films that I have seen, you know, where you have that authenticity and that naturalism and the setting, and also that to me that links also to this idea that you may or may not have heard of in terms of third world cinema, you know, just how people from the South and all of us, you know, are telling stories just like what you said that are true to the people that are depicted. So I wondered if the way that your film seemed to be in that same tradition, if that was intentional on your part.
You know, I grew up in Finland, or I spent most of my life, you know, in Finland, where I have never ever seen an African film on the big screen, you know, because it's a very small country where everything that's distributed in the cinemas is from Hollywood, you know. So I wasn't really familiar with African cinema or with the third world, you know, cinema until maybe just recently, and I was really you know, blown away by how incredibly beautiful it is, you know. So it only started with, you know, one of my, you know, favorite directors, African directors, you know, Mohamed Saleh Haroun, who is a wonderful, you know, director, and then I really, but for me it was never about copying, you know, any other African cinema, or, you know, trying to do the same way that they have done because I haven't really grown up with, you know. And so I would catch African films in at film festivals because that's the only place that I could actually discover, films from the continent, since there was no, theatrical distribution in Europe, you know. But for me, it was just about, like I said, staying really truth to the authenticity of the story, and the people that I have grown up with, and and because I'm a filmmaker that usually um writes about his surroundings. I'm not really interested in and in creating kind of like fabricated stories. Everything that I have been a part of have always been inspired by conversations that I have had with my colleagues, with my friends, with my family members, everything that I have been a part of. So I just really wanted to stay true to those characters, to those world, to the world um of that film, and yeah, and just that.
Okay. I mean, the key word for me from what you said, two things stand out. One is the importance of authenticity. You said
Abs-
that.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that you said, which is, that's the advice we hear from all the screenwriting, gurus and stuff, is that you should write what you know.
Absolutely.
And so that those things come through. I think the thing that I also thought, I mean, I saw somewhere that I guess at one of the festivals, maybe I don't know which one, that Sasako was
Yeah.
uh, was one
It
of
was
the.
FESPACO. It was
Oh,
FESPACO.
FESPACO. Okay,
Yeah,
so he
the,
was
the,
one of
the
the judges.
largest film festival in Africa.
Yes,
Yeah.
FESPACO in Ouagadougou in Burkina
Yes.
Faso.
Absolutely.
And I see, I mean, when I see your film, I mean, I feel a kinship, maybe unintended, but I just feel a kinship, and
Absolutely.
so yeah, and I admire that kinship.
Absolutely.
Can you comment a little on that?
Um, can kinship, you mean like an
It could mean
understanding what?
anything, whatever you
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of, Sisako, and I have seen all of his films, and I met him, I think 2015, at Cannes Film Festival, when I was still developing the script of this film at the Cine Foundation Residence, which is a part of Cannes Film Festival. And he is such an a very genuine, and humble person. We had a very short, conversation. But for me, it's, it's really difficult to say, but I think, it I honestly don't know. But I think it was because the story just touched, and and yeah, I really.
Okay, that's good. No, I'm loving it, especially the background,
Yeah.
specifics in terms of how you actually have came across Sasako. I'm a big
Yeah,
fan as well,
I'm
obviously.
a
Yeah.
really big fan. Yeah, and it's funny because I recently saw Timbuktu for the first time, and I remember when I was writing the script, I had a lot of people telling me that I should watch Timbuktu, you know, but I was avoiding, that film, and also another film that was, compared the film to, which is a very classic film, Italian, called The Bicycle Thief, and I really was avoiding those films intentionally, because I was creating my own world, and I really wanted to stay true to those characters and their world. So um I didn't want to, kind of like have those films influence, in a way in a way of making this film. And I have seen both of them after I, have made the film, and they're both incredibly, good films. But yeah, I'm really huge fan of FESPACO, and you know, I watch and have watched everything that he has been a part of.
That's so good, man. I mean, it's so interesting. I mean, I understand totally what you're saying in every way,
Yeah,
and it's just interesting how, I don't know, on some levels, I don't know if you agree with this, but I mean, people say that, there's really nothing new under the sun. You know what I mean?
absolutely,
Yeah. And so I think that's what that proves. But I mean, good is good,
absolutely,
what
absolutely.
works is working, you know what I
Okay,
mean? And so it
exactly,
has its
exactly,
own reasons. You don't have to justify it in any
exactly.
way. Yeah,
And you know, I believe that one story can be told in hundreds of different ways.
that's
It
exactly true.
just depends on the perspective. You know, I mean, there are uh, hundreds, if not thousands, of films about cops. There are a lot of, thousands of films about love, but each film is different because it's from different perspective. They all deal up, with the same subject, but from different perspectives. So yeah, it all really comes down to that specific perspective and how much people can, and those who can relate to that perspective.
And I
Yeah,
mean, I think one of the things too that links us as people, as human beings, is just that this idea, well, at least for me, I mean, one of the things that's very important, to me is honesty. Honesty is
absolutely,
important. It's not like I always have it, like I
absolutely,
always do it. But I mean, in terms of my value system, it's very important. And so when I
absolutely.
feel that something has come across honestly,
Mm,
I'm already a fan. I'm already a fan.
absolutely.
And I can say that, I mean, this is kind of going out of the order I had my questions set up. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I
but
love it.
but the thing is that when I first saw it the first time, I mean, like everybody else, I mean, I can't be like I saw things differently from everybody. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like everybody else. I was really struck
yeah,
by the relationship of Guled and Nasra. I mean, you just feel it. You
mm,
feel it, and it's honest.
absolutely, absolutely. And that was one of the most challenging things while writing the script, to keep it as simple as possible and as honesty as possible. And these two things are extremely difficult in writing, and especially in creating, because it's very difficult to read that from paper, you know. So those were really the most challenging things. Like, how can I keep this story as simple as possible while also keeping it as honest as possible, and as emotional as possible. It's a very simple story, but with layers, with many different layers. And you don't and all these layers are not just really up into your face, you know. So that was the most challenging thing, to have those without really making a big deal, you know.
Yeah, it definitely comes through. I mean, and also, I mean, in doing that, because I mean, life is like that. Life is full of contradictions. I mean, life is, it's layered, just like what you're
Absolutely.
saying. And so
Absolutely.
just to see this relationship, you know, there's so many things that people think about, with regard to African culture in
Yeah.
general, but then
Yeah.
specific African cultures, specifically.
Yeah.
But I think that, one of the things I think that I hear a lot from a lot of people is that, that it's really a pretty much a macho, kind
Yeah.
of,
Absolutely.
yeah, culture and that kind of thing. And it is in its way. I agree that
Mm.
that's true. I mean, and I even saw it in your film. I mean, I
Yeah.
saw when we were at when they were meeting, the council was meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw who was
Absolutely.
at the council, okay?
Absolutely.
And I saw who wasn't. So I mean,
Absolutely.
I see that all those things are true,
Yeah.
but it's also
Yeah.
true. And then there's also a thing about African culture that I found out, because I've traveled a little bit in Africa. And the thing is
Yeah.
that, I mean, again, this thing back to honesty, that people just kind of, they bring it, they sort of bring it as they feel it and see it. And so it felt like, in terms of that relationship,
Yeah.
that, there was an honesty between the two characters such that it turned, the gender issues
Absolutely.
on upside down. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I thought that was so cleverly, beautifully
Yeah.
sensitively, romantically done.
Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, because I have grown up with sensitive men in my family, but like you said, when we look or watch African cinema, it's one dimension. Like really, all the characters are just so macho that you hardly see a sensitive African man in cinema. And I was like, but yeah, but what about those men, in my family that I have seen? I've never seen them in, such characters on the big screen, and they do exist, you know. So and also love story. You hardly see, African love story, you know. So I was like, okay, and and like there's so many films about, immigration, about, Africans, traveling abroad to find better life. But I was also thinking about, what about my aunts? What about my uncles who live in Africa, who were born in Africa, who live there and dream in Africa and want to die in Africa and never want to go? Because all we see,
That's right.
from African perspective, like those who are immigrating to other continents to find better life. But what about those millions of people
Who stay
who
put
just have, daily struggles, but love their
where they
country
are.
and want to be there and don't dream of going anywhere else? And so that was also one of the reasons why I really made this film about, in their story, they dream about traveling in Africa, not traveling to other continents, because there's so much to discover in Africa, you know. So for me, it was very, very important to keep everything within the continent, whether it's, the cast, the film, the music, everything. Keep it in Africa, because it's things that I never see on the big screen.
No, you did it. You really did it. And I mean, this, we don't need to go further in this, but I just thought about how Guled, I mean, the idea of him being in a relationship, a sensitive man in a relationship with a woman that he loves. But I mean, the idea of henpeck doesn't even enter the picture. I don't know if you know what that means, but I'm just saying he's not a man who is like in any way, suffering in terms of his
Absolutely.
ego or masculinity. Not at
Absolutely.
all. He's fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And
So,
she, and there's so much dignity in their
yeah,
lives, and
yeah,
strength, you
yeah.
know, and also compassion, and Nasra, telling him to stay strong when
That's
she's the
right.
one who's really, I mean, I just wanted to put everything that I have seen and witnessed, you know, and so all these people do exist, but it's just a shame that you never get to see them on the big screen. So I felt like it was my responsibility to put that on the big screen.
No, you've done it.
Mm.
One of the other things, well, one of the things that we're going back to Sasako, I mean, one of the things that he's known for doing is that, a couple of things. One is, telling these individual stories, but that have universal
Absolutely.
meaning,
Ab-
and also
ab-
he also addresses stuff. I mean, he's not, he's
Absolutely.
not necessarily, that may not be his main agenda, but
Mm,
he
mm,
addresses, he brings critique, he does
absolutely.
bring critique.
Absolutely.
And so if
Absolutely.
you're paying attention, you see that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So now this is some of the stuff that I saw. Now you could tell me, because I can go off. I see things that may not be there. You know what I mean? But these are some of the things that I was thinking that I appreciated. One of the
Yeah.
things, because one of the issues here in our culture, and I think it's around the world, this issue
Mm,
of, and it's gotten worse, the exact, how it's exacerbated between people who have and people who don't have. This
absolutely.
idea of that tension, it's just getting worse. It didn't used to be as bad here as it is
Yeah.
now. God,
Yeah.
now, oh my God. And I
Absolutely.
felt that tension, it wasn't like a big thing, but it was there
Mm,
in your
yeah.
piece. I mean, when you see this woman just like, just blithely underpay this
Yeah.
man, Guled,
Yeah.
for what he has done. And,
ab-
that tension, just like
ab-
that, and that dismissal, that's
Absolutely.
what that means. That's what that
Yeah.
means. Or when you see Guled go to this man's house, big palatial house, and the man
Absolutely,
said, "No, I have
absolutely,
no money. I have no money. I can't do
absolutely,
it." I mean,
ab-
that's what that's doing. It's
absolutely,
letting us know that this same problem,
absolutely,
same thing.
absolutely, and it's a universal thing that's that's going on everywhere, and um, it's like nobody wants to extend that helping hand when you're in need, because it's this world that we live in, like you're only something when you have something. And and that's why it was really important for me to also show this sub story, with the young Mahad, who falls in love with this young woman. And also to show how helping this small community that have less and really have the most. They might have less money, but they have the most, when it comes to love, when it comes to helping each other, through everything. And I really wanted to show that, because like when he goes to this big palace, like this big white house, they tell him. And also when he goes to the shop, it's like, no, you see they
Right.
have everything, but they don't want to give.
That's
And then you
right.
see you have his friend who has nothing, but still wants to give something. So
That's
that's
right.
that's
Yeah.
the world we live in these days.
Yes.
Is one day I was walking in Paris, and I see this homeless man who is like feeding the birds, and nobody else does that. Everybody's just busy running around and walking around, but he stays to help, to feed every morning those birds. So I was like, wow, it takes like a homeless man to really understand the needs of those other beings.
A
you know
homeless man to demonstrate humanity. You know what I mean? A
absolutely,
homeless man
absolutely,
has to
absolutely,
demonstrate humanity.
absolutely.
One of the things that also struck me right at the beginning, you saw right at the beginning that there was a certain camaraderie amongst these grave diggers, how they relate to each other. That was very
Mm,
funny. I mean, just seeing how they relate to each other, how they
absolutely.
tease each other, how they help each other. As you say
Yeah,
later on, they actually
absolutely.
financially help each other. They wingman help each other.
Absolutely.
They help each other in a lot.
Sharing one cigarette,
Yeah,
sharing one bottle of
yeah.
water, like absolutely, absolutely.
It was
Be-
so that was yeah, that was a thing. And I think that, I mean, to me, now this is maybe corny to you, but I mean, to me, that's what, when they talk about this, African concept, Ubuntu, that
mm,
to me is what that really
ab-
means. Yeah, I
absolutely,
just feel like that's an expression of Ubuntu. And I thought
absolutely.
that. I
Mm.
was going to ask you though, about tell us this idea. What did you want to do with the belling the cat, um, story that he was telling? Tell me about that.
It's first of all, that scene was supposed to be somewhere in the middle, and there was um there's no dialogue was supposed to be in that as well. But we were in the scene, and there were so many changes that I made on set. So I was like, you know what, let us try something different. Let us try that you tell a story, and then fall. And then he picked up this story about the cats bells. And the, and then at some point I realized that this joke in the beginning defines somehow the entire story of the film,
It does.
about the strength of which cat goes to do that.
Yeah,
That becomes a symbol for
it
the story,
does.
like the strength of Guled doing
Yeah,
exactly that, going to the
right,
village,
right.
which is the cat, and putting that bell. And so it somehow defines the story, when it was just really something that was intentionally in the script, but that was just decided on set. And I I'm so incredibly thankful that it just sits so perfectly well in the film.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it also just looks at that, because the thing about Bell and the Cat is that
Yeah,
who's gonna do that?
absolutely,
You know what I mean? And so the point is that you're taking on an impossible task.
absolutely,
And that's what he's doing. He's taking on
exactly,
an impossible task.
exactly,
You know what I mean? So there's
exactly.
no doubt in his mind that he has to do it.
Ab- Absolutely.
Somebody's
Thank
got
you.
to do it. He's gonna do it. That's it. So it
Absolutely.
really does pick up a lot of stuff, right there. Another thing I wanted to get clarification on is because here, anyway, um, so both of them, both Guled and Nasra, are estranged from their families.
Yeah.
And you see when a Guled returns to his village, you see the scrutiny, that he
Mm,
faces, how
mm,
people are looking at him and whispering and
mm,
and
yeah.
not wanting to help him and all of that. And I was thinking that that idea of, I mean, because it's like you got Ubuntu on the one hand, but then you also
Yeah.
have this other thing that
Yeah.
does happen, and I mean, and then you could even, if I wanted to, and you might not so much like it, but I mean, I could even link it, to the bigger picture of the violence that happens like in a Somali civil
Mm,
war, that's based on these kinds of cleavages
mm,
and things
mm,
like that. And so it's
mm,
like, again, the contradictions, the
mm.
contradictions of being a human being in a
Yeah.
society, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I thought I
Yeah.
saw that, but again,
Yeah.
who knows what I saw?
Yeah. No, I mean it's a very interesting perspective because when I was writing the film, I was never interested in sharing a tribal thing, which is a very big deal in Somali society. So for me, it was just about two people from two different villages who come to who run away together, and that the family don't approve or accept their life choice, and this happens a lot. I mean the village people, these animals are everything to them. It's all they have. You know, So if you left a long time ago and you come back to claim them, then that's not going to happen easily, because in some because in Somali society there's and I think it's also in Muslim society, that a man can marry four wives. So in that era, it's like to become a bigger family, you need to marry multiple wives to have more children as well. But Guled and Nasra haven't done that choice. They love each other and they want to stick together through everything, and they have only one son, and that's something that also the family is not really happy with. It's like, why are you sticking by this sick woman when you can have so many other younger women who can give you more children, everything. But that's his love for his wife, that he doesn't want to do anything like that. But these things do happen in the village, and it's really normal. Yeah.
Another thing that was interesting was also the relationship between Guled and his son,
Yeah.
Mahad. Yeah, and it was just interesting that kind of on the one level, their connecting was not nearly as organic as that
Yeah.
between the son
It-
and the mother.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very different. And so you
Absolutely.
even wondered, is there friction there or something? But
Mm,
in the bigger picture, you saw that
mm,
there was the love and the,
ab-
yeah,
absolutely.
the appreciation and the
Absolutely. Absolutely. For me, it was just that, that character is actually based on somebody that I knew when I was a kid. There was this kid in the neighborhood who had, both parents, but who would always prefer to be on the streets with other homeless kids. And I have always wondered, why is he always, with the homeless kids when he has a home and parents? But there are so many different reasons why kids choose to not to be at home. But for me, it was more about him not understanding what's going on, the absence of his father all the time, and the sickness of his mother. He doesn't really understand what's happening, and he prefers to be outside with his friends than to be at home. But they have warm relationship, but and that's why in the end, when he's really sitting on the tree
Mhm.
waiting for
Looking
him,
for him. Yeah.
absolutely looking for what to so there was never a cold relationship between them. It's just that he was avoiding his parents, to just be have that you know fun with his friends.
Yes. Um, Also, let's talk about the use of music in your film and the specific music that you used.
Yeah,
I just wanted to, I mean, like in the beginning, when I mean, kind of like the mood of the film, is introduced partly by the score, because when Guled is walking down,
yeah,
he's left and he's walking down into
yeah,
the valley of where he lives, and it's like rocky, sandy. You
yeah.
already see that there's going to be some issues here. You know what I
abs-
mean?
Absolutely.
It's not gonna
When you
be-
see the neighborhood,
right,
absolutely.
right. So tell
Yeah,
me about the specific music that you use and how that came
yeah.
together. Yeah.
For me, it's always about less is more. Whether it's writing a script or whether it's using music and everything. So I really wanted a score that could just be very supportive of those characters, that would support the emotions of those characters. And the score is done by Andre Matthias, who is from Germany, and he's incredibly talented. And we had many discussions about what type of music I want, and not wanting so many instruments that would be so melodramatic, and that would overshadow the characters and the emotions of this, but very, very subtle and simple, that would just support the emotions. And he really, really understood that. And so yeah, that's something that he created, that I was extremely happy about. And the music, the songs, there are both Senegalese and Somalis songs in the film. And like I said, I really wanted to keep everything within the continent. I
Yeah.
was offered some American or English songs, but I was not really interested, because I wanted to keep everything in Africa, whether it's music and everything. And so I found this incredibly beautiful song called Kila Tete, that plays in the end, by Senegalese
Yes.
artist, Jibril Diop, and featuring Aida Sam. I found that song while I was still writing the script.
Wow.
I found it so incredibly beautiful and emotional that I was like, I want to use this song in the film, but I didn't know where in the film I wanted to use. So once I had the first, rough cut, and then I just tried to put it in the end, and it set so perfectly well, the ending, that I'm like, okay, that I was like, okay, this is it. And then I did everything that we could to get the rights, of that song. But I just really wanted, um, good emotional songs that would just support the emotions of the characters and not overshadow, or and yeah.
It's interesting that that particular guy, that composer, he has a name of a great filmmaker, and but he just doesn't have all of it. He just has.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought it worked really well at the end, because at the end was kind of, it was the end. You have to think, oh, you have to feel or something. I mean, you have to bring a lot of things together. You have to
Ab-
decide as a
Absolutely.
viewer
Absolutely.
how you feel,
Ab-
if you feel hopeful or if you feel how you feel. You have to
Mm,
put it all together here, and there all the things are there. But
absolutely.
it's you're working us, Khadar. Why are you
I
working?
know. Because I really wanted to invite the audience to be a part of the film. I really wanted to have them invested, in this story, because most of the time when I'm watching a movie, a film, I feel like I'm just being told to sit and just watch, but not to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in this case, I really like with all these silences and these I really wanted to the audience to try to think what they are going to say next, or what they're thinking, or to have them in like to have them as a part of characters,
Yeah.
and not just sit and watch and just look and say, okay, okay, that's happened, but to just really think and be a part of it. And yeah, and then leave it open to everyone to understand how they want to understand
So you don't want to, that's it?
it. That's it. I myself don't know. But tell me if you know anything, because I really don't.
Well, one thing I know,
A lot of people ask me if I know, but I am absolutely as clueless as everybody else, and I'm just as hopeful as everybody else. Yeah.
well, one thing I know, not so much for that, because that takes more thought, but I know that just meeting you now, and that there's something that could escape people or the audience of the film, or just people that meet you. But if you really pay attention, it's really there, is that you really seem to have a great sense of humor, which I really appreciate, right?
Yeah, thank you.
And in the film, it was so subtle, but it was so there. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like when you see this for you, I mean, we don't even get ready for him with
Yeah.
that shoe until we see that shoe. Yeah, we're like, OMG. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I just really wanted, to not to. My intention was to never make the film, dark and depressing. I just really wanted to tell this authentic story with a little bit of humor, because we go through so many different emotions in our daily lives. So for me, when when I'm watching a movie and it's just dark and depressing from the beginning to the end, I'm like, but that's not reality, that's not the truth. So for me, and it wasn't like I really put those humors in the film just to make people laugh, but they came from the characters, you
Yeah.
know
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was just a natural sit in there, but it wasn't like I really wanted to make people laugh, like or have them do something stupid, just to lighten up a little bit, the atmosphere.
But Khadar, did it have to be red?
Because I thought it would be very visible. I really even wanted like much higher heels. But
Oh, stiletto. You want
exactly,
to?
but it was just so difficult for him to walk on the rocks, and
Yeah.
they were like, you know what?
Yeah, that would have been hilarious. Yeah.
I don't know why, but I just felt like the red would really sit perfect, because it would be so visible, you know.
Yeah. And it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
It
if it
is.
was black, I think it would have given a different vibe, or something. But just red is just so up in your face.
Yeah, it's in your face, and it was. Yeah, no, I like that, and I like the playfulness of the. Oh, there's two things. I mean, I like the playfulness of the whole goat scenario at the
Yeah,
wedding, and
yeah,
all of that. That was very humorous, and
mm,
also just being. We didn't have much, but that time at the wedding was also. It showed you another aspect of the culture. Just how
absolutely,
it works, and it felt authentic,
absolutely.
and it felt wonderful. Yeah.
That's how we do it in Somalia. You just crash a wedding. You never get like and, but I also wanted to really show a different side of Nasra, because I because the film starts with her being sick. So I was like, what was she like before she got sick? What
Yeah.
type of person she was, and what type of fun she used to have before, because the story starts in the middle when she's already
Yeah.
sick. So what was
That's
she
right.
like before that?
Yeah.
And and also that, to what makes him really love her, that she's the fun
Yeah.
crazy one when he's the more quiet guy. And then
Yeah.
we get to
Yeah.
understand that, okay, now we know why he's in love with her, because they complete each other. you know so and the wedding, the crashing, because people make up all kind of like crazy things just to get into the wedding ceremonies.
Yeah. I mean, it really does make your point. The point from just before is that you're right. I mean, I don't care where you are in this, in the chronology or the ladder of success
Mm,
or whatever. It doesn't matter whether you're at the bottom, you don't have much, or you at
abs-
the top, you have a lot. There's
absolutely,
still going to be a range of experiences, and it's
absolutely,
not like you're going to have the same
ab-
registers of experience every day. You're still
absolutely,
going to laugh some days. I don't care where
absolutely,
you are on the spectrum. You're still
absolutely.
going to cry some days, wherever you are. And that's what
Yeah,
humanity is. But we don't
absolutely,
get that. Oh, no.
absolutely.
It's just like, oh, I mean, it's just like, it's so, So I feel like
Exactly,
it's
exactly.
wonderful to be able to see that, in a
Absolutely,
context that
absolutely.
authenticates, the beauty of the love story, that
Mm,
we're watching.
mm.
Now, the
Thank
other
you.
thing that I want, now this is more technical, I wanted to ask you about, because I have a background also as an editor, is the um, the use of kind of dynamic editing stuff, especially in terms of certain scenes, when you were like cross-cutting from one, like
Yeah,
even the story of how they met, for instance. That's a
yeah,
good example
yeah,
of how dynamic that was.
absolutely.
Very different than where,
Yeah,
how we've gotten here, but
absolutely.
suddenly, boom,
Yeah,
boom, boom, boom.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So
But
tell us.
that was actually in the script,
I was
and
wondering if that was scripted. Yes, I
that
was
was
wondering if
yeah,
it was
yeah,
scripted.
that was
Yeah.
and, and the film was edited by the wonderful, Sebastian Thimmler, who is also from Germany, and that was from day one to that was the only scene in the script that never changed from
Okay. Okay.
just the draft. Just that was so people always ask Sebastian, like, how did you cut that scene? And then he's always like, well, it wasn't the script, it just came like that. And I'm like, just take credit, for it. So just say like I did it, but that was actually in the script.
No, it's
Yeah,
important to know that it was scripted. It is.
absolutely,
It's important to know. And
absolutely.
I'm glad you
Yeah,
just went right to it. Yes, I was going to ask that.
absolutely. Yeah,
How about the other one? Because there was the other one in terms of the beating and that was intercutting in that part,
yeah,
when
that was also in the script. Absolutely, that was also in the script. But Sebastian did an incredible job. That he also add so much, into that story, which made it even more wonderful. But yeah, those scenes like intercutting were also in the script.
no, and it really does. But it's just the right level of, it's almost like the red shoe, in a way.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely,
It brings you.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so what do you see? I mean, like in terms of what this has meant to you and your career and your aspirations, the Gravedigger's wife. Sum it up for us. Tell us what this means and what you see
Um.
next and all of that. Yeah.
This film has been in the making for too long, and I'm just really extremely happy that it finally came out for everyone to see, and I hope it will also get a theatrical release in USA someday. But for me, it was just because I'm I never studied cinema, I never studied filmmaking. I have never worked on any other filmmaker set other than my own. Um, so for me, it was just about um, not becoming that one-time filmmaker who did a short film like 15 years ago. That was my worst fear, to be that filmmaker who did a short film like many 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 years ago. So I just really wanted to make this film, and the success has of this film has been incredibly crazy, but I have never let that have effect on me in any way, because when you have worked something for so hard, you just enjoy it, but you just don't let that get into your head and act like you are something. So I'm just really as humble as I have been before by making the film, and I'm just so happy that hopefully this will open doors for me as well in the future. Yeah, so I'm just been incredibly honored, by the success of this film. And yeah, and I really I'm a writer before I'm director, so I really love and enjoy creating my own universes, my own world, my own characters, you know. So I this just encourages me to continue writing, African language films. That's where my interest is, to really continue telling, because my idols are, Sisako and, Mohammed Saleh Haroun, who have always, told stories, from Africa, and and also Alan Gomes, and so I just really want to continue that same path of, following those incredible directors and keep telling, sharing African stories with the world.
It must have been incredible to be, well, you said you'd been to Cannes before, but it must have been incredible. It must have been incredible to be with your own film completed and have it
Absolutely.
be at Cannes. Tell us.
I mean, the first time was in 2015, and I was there just, as a part of guest. So I was just really going around the parties, watching movies. But having a film is incredibly different because, there's so much responsibility, so much press, so many, interviews and, stuff that you get to do, but also, the joy of sharing your film with the global cinema. Cannes is a celebration of world cinema. So you have people from different parts of the world coming together to just celebrate cinema and watch movies, and every screening is packed. So it was just really joy to watch the film with the audience for the first time and see the reactions, and have them comment and compliment and thank you for that. So it was just really something that I will forever cherish, and something that I will never ever forget. And it's something that I really hope every emerging filmmaker will get to experience, one day.